'Cause we'll be counting stars. Yeah, we'll be counting stars.
Gretchen Clark, the first Chatham Hall alumna I interviewed, graduated in 1992 from Chatham Hall and is also a Virginia Tech graduate. She is a civil engineer and the president of Reynolds Clark Development, based in Gretna, Virginia.
I'm a water resources engineer, and we design water lines and sewer lines. We also deal a lot with wetlands, and we try to create our designs in such a way that they don't impact wetlands or that lessens the impact on wetlands and streams.
Why did you decide to become an engineer? What fascinates you about it?
Well, my father has a construction company, and he always encouraged me to look at engineering as a field. And so I did some summer internships even before college, and that kind of helped guide my career path and solidified that this is something I wanted to do.
Marion Wiggins is a 1978 graduate of Chatham Hall and has a geology degree from Appalachian State University. She has been a geologist for 25 years and is currently a senior geologist at Vulcan Materials Company. I was interested in geology because I was very outdoorsy. I liked hiking. A class called Geology for Hikers grabbed my attention. First, I was majoring in biology, but I just got hooked on geology, and that became more evident as I took more classes. She didn't encounter any negativity in college and said that her professors were very supportive. However, she encountered negativity when she entered the workplace. Not all geology is like that, but my particular area is very male-dominated, she said. I think it's gotten better. In my industry, it's a little rougher than in other science careers. I've seen change, but it could be much better, she continued. Elizabeth Steer is a 1973 Chatham Hall graduate, and she received her undergraduate degree in chemistry from the University of Virginia.
Currently, I am a consultant. I have my own business. It's after my previous full-time position was Director of Analytical Sciences at PGX Health, which was a small pharmaceutical company in Charlottesville, Virginia.
What did persuade you to enter science?
I just thought it was fun. It makes sense, you're trying to make things logical and understand why things are happening and how to do it, and there's an inherent truth to science. It's not something you can make up. It's not something you can make if it doesn't really exist. You might not understand it and don't know why things are happening, but there is a why. You just have to find out what it is.
The first graduate student and the youngest woman in science I interviewed is a native of France. She is a graduate of Harvard College with a major in astrophysics and is currently a graduate student at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics.
In high school, I really had no clue what I wanted to do. I knew I was leaning towards the sciences just because the way I was thinking was more in that way. And then I took a year off before college, and I spent a semester in New Zealand, actually, at a university there to improve my English. And so I was like, I'm here for a semester in New Zealand. I'm going to take the most random subjects, something that I would never even think of doing for real. So I took astronomy because I'm like, oh, astronomy, that's so random, right? And I took that for a semester and I really liked it. So when I got here, I took the intro astronomy course here as an undergrad and decided it was fun and interesting.
Bekki Dawson is also a graduate student at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. Prior to becoming a graduate student, she graduated from Wellesley College.
So I first became a little bit interested in astronomy in, I think it was middle school, because I was on vacation and would always bring along a lot of books to read, but I ran out of my books, so my dad lent me the book that he was reading, which was a popular science book called The Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking, and it had all this cool description of like wormholes and black holes and time traveling and things like that. And it was just really interesting, so I found some other popular science books on that subject to read. So then when I started college, I thought it'd be fun to take a whole class about this. So I signed up for an astronomy class. And it was a lot of fun, but actually it turned out that my favorite part of the class was when we were learning about planets. So that summer I got to work with the professor of that class on a research project about planets. And that was a lot of fun, so that's what really convinced me to start seriously pursuing astronomy as a major and then go to graduate school.
Courtney Dressing is a graduate student at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics and a graduate of Princeton University.
I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., and I went to Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology.
Oh, okay. So did you focus on science in high school?
I did. I actually managed to take astronomy, so we had required senior research projects. My senior year, I worked with a scientist at the Smithsonian Institute to study dunes on Mars. I was always really curious about whether there were other beings in the universe that were looking up in the night sky and wondering if there were other people there as well. And the more I read and the more I learned, I realized that was actually a viable career path. So I went to space camp when I was little, and then I took astronomy in high school and started doing research projects. And I realized that I really like doing research. I like serving as a teaching assistant in classes. I like working with younger students, and I thought it was really a good fit.
What are some examples of science classes you took in college?
I took a bunch of astrophysics and physics classes, so things like stars and galaxies, cosmology, electricity and magnetism, mechanics. And then I also wanted to try out some other sciences, so I took a course on basic chemistry and a couple classes in biology, including things like genetics. And one of my favorite classes was taking an astrobiology course that kind of brought everything together and tried to figure out what you need to have a habitable planet. I work on the Kepler spacecraft, which is currently orbiting the Sun. It's following the Earth in its orbit around the Sun. Kepler's staring at 100,000 stars, monitoring all of them to see if any of them have planets. And the way Kepler does that is it monitors the brightness of the star, and then if a planet passes in front, the star appears dimmer. And based on how much dimmer it appears, you can tell whether you have an Earth-sized planet or a Jupiter, because the Jupiter would cause a much bigger dip because it blocks more of the star's surface. And my project in particular is looking at the smallest stars studied by Kepler. The reason why we care about those is that although we might think that the Sun is a common star, it's actually a lot bigger than most stars. And 75% of the stars in the nearby galaxy, in our section of the Milky Way, are actually only about a quarter of the size of the Sun. So you need to look at these small stars. So I'm figuring out how many of them have planets and how many of those planets could be like the Earth.